Number 10.
I need to kill Oscar. Ashley, I really didn't. I really think I did that. I didn't mean to hurt him.
That was 17-year-old Dylan Shymaker, who fatally beat his girlfriend's 23-month-old son. I mean, is this real life right now? I watched videos about this kid's case, and his lawyers were trying to justify that Dylan has an anger problem. He didn't mean to kill the 23-month-old baby. He didn't know how to control himself. I'm not sure why there are lawyers defending people like this, you know, defending killers. That little baby didn't have a chance at life. What is his lawyers thinking? What are they fighting for?
But there were other dynamics at work there, including my client's inability to either control his anger or frustration and his inexperience in babysitting.
So this took place in Buffalo in the States, and jurors convicted Dylan of second-degree murder. The judge sentenced him to 15 years to life in prison, which is the maximum punishment in Buffalo. Moving into number 9, we have this girl who freaked out after she was given a life sentence. She was hyperventilating, like
Slow down.
So just before the panic attacks were happening, this girl fell to the ground and she started yelling in the courtroom. The woman's family was also freaking out. Alright, number 8.
I gotta wake up every day with that. So, just ask. Actually, I don't ask. I'm just sorry.
I know it's hard to understand what this kid is saying, but he's begging for forgiveness. It's a hard video to watch. I know people make mistakes, but killing someone isn't something that society can forgive, or can they?
John, is there anything you want to say before sentencing?
Well, that was 17-year-old John Freeman, who was saying sorry to the victim's family after he strangled a 5-year-old girl to death. I mean, in that moment, was he really sorry? This also took place near Buffalo, and he was given 25 years to life, and this is for a second-degree murder in which John Freeman pleaded guilty to. So when John turns 42 years old, a judge will determine whether or not John is a danger to himself or to society, and if he's going to be released. Hopefully, if he is released, he's a changed person. There are also many people who have served a number of years to life who just don't get released from prison because they're just always deemed as a danger to society. So although you get like 15 years to life, you can serve like 50 years. Alright, moving into number 7, we have this. You couldn't see the guy I'm talking about during this part of the video, but who you're about to see is 19-year-old Dexter Johnson, who is 19 years old at the time, so he raged out in court when he was given the death sentence. I guess he has nothing else to lose. This is what this guy looks like.
Punishment of death. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, this is going to complete your jury service. I'm going to meet you in the jury room.
All rise.
The jurors convicted Dexter Johnson of capital murder. Dexter was involved in a carjacking, robbery, rape, and murder of 23-year-old Maria Paris. Dexter is now 28 years old, and he's still on death row. And right now, he does not have an execution date. Although someone is given the death penalty, it takes a very long time to go through the whole process. Do you guys believe in the death penalty? Sound off in the comment section. At number 6, we now have teenager Samantha Grigg, who was charged for murdering a Michigan State University student, Dustin Frolka.
Grigg pleaded guilty to unarmed robbery and manslaughter in Frolka's death. The 19-year-old's body was found along I-69 last February. He had been beaten with brass knuckles, robbed.
This case just doesn't seem to make sense to me. 16-year-old Samantha at the time decided to plan a kidnapping to rob and kill Frolka. I mean, she's 16. How do you have these thoughts? She had someone help her as well, and that was 18-year-old Tyrell Bredernitz. So the reason why this doesn't make sense, because it does seem like Samantha had a really bright future. She threw it all away. She was actually a lead singer of her band, and she was actually quite good.
Singer in a band.
Number 5, we have this teenager who, after given his sentencing, turned around and just attacks the people in the first row. I think it was the victim's family. Yeah, luckily the police was right there to get on top of the situation, to handle the situation before anyone got hurt. All right, number 4.
Can't, they understand the seriousness of the crime.
Barbeau will almost certainly start his prison sentence at the Department of Corrections, Lincoln Hills School for Boys, north of Wausau.
That was 15-year-old Antonio Barbeau at the time of his trial. This one is pretty messed up, but he was given a life sentence for killing his great-grandmother back in 2012. He was just 13 years old. Antonio and his friend killed his great-grandmother with a hatchet and a hammer. The great-grandmother was 78 years old, and this is just so sickening. Antonio won't be eligible for release until he's 50 years old. The article I was reading about this stated that Antonio's lawyers said the punishment was cruel and unusual. I mean, are they freaking kidding me? There's no way that the lawyer actually said this in court. How does that lawyer even sleep at night trying to get this killer out to the public sooner? The reason why Antonio killed his great-grandmother was for money. It's so sickening. I think the punishment wasn't cruel enough, but that's just my opinion. Moving into number 3, we have an 18-year-old who was sentenced to 20 years in state prison for using a dating app to set up a robbery that resulted in a shootout. In the footage I'm about to play for you guys, I really feel bad for this mother who is just so hurt. Once she finds out her daughter was charged and sentenced to 20 years in prison, she totally loses it. She freaks out, and then the teenager starts to freak out as well. This one is really sad. Watch.
20 years in state prison.
The teenager was then quickly taken out of the courtroom by police officers, and the mother was just left there to cry. She was so heartbroken, and I would be as well if I found out that my kid committed a robbery and guns were used and then they were sentenced to 20 years in prison. It's like you lost them. I'm not sure if she is even able to get out of prison sooner, but she did use a deadly weapon during this robbery that could have resulted in someone losing their life. Do you guys think that 20 years was, maybe too harsh of a punishment for this crime? All right, number 2.
Saying pull the trigger that killed your son, masturbates to memory. All of you.
Sentencing Lane to life in prison, Judge David Fury said he lacked remorse and had feigned mental illness.
So this guy might look familiar to you guys, and to be honest with you, I don't care if this guy gets left in prison and forgotten about for the rest of his life. So who you just saw was TJ Lane, the teenager who was in front of a judge for sentencing for a school shooting in Ohio back in 2012. TJ was 17 years old when he shot and killed 3 students and injured another 3. Although TJ was a minor at the time of the attack during the sentencing, he was tried as an adult and he was given 3 life sentences in prison without parole. Well, just a few years after the attack, TJ, he was actually able to escape prison. This was just 8 days before his birthday, and he escaped from Allen Correctional Institution in Ohio along with 2 other inmates. He was able to escape using a makeshift ladder. They used it to scale down a fence during recreation hours. One of the men was quickly recaptured, but TJ and another man who was serving a 12-year sentence for aggravated robbery and burglary and kidnapping remained at large. Police conducted a nationwide search and told nearby residents to lock their doors. Eventually, both men were captured, and TJ was then put into a small cell for 23 hours a day, and he stayed there until he awaited for his transfer to a maximum security prison. A prison where hopefully you can't make a makeshift ladder and escape again. And finally, at number 1, we have this scary freakout from a California teenager who was begging to not go to prison. That was 18-year-old Fernando Elgato, who was accused of rape. He denies all claims, and he was freaking out when he was being sentenced because he was actually afraid of going back to prison. For some reason, he thought that if he fought back, he would somehow be released.
Scared of returning to jail, 18-year-old...
I feel really bad for this kid because if he actually didn't do it, he just appeared in front of a judge, he got sentenced, and now he's going back to prison where I don't really know what happens there. I can only imagine. Okay, so starting us off like we always do with number 10.
By Judge Rebecca Dallett, who gave him life without parole, sparking the outburst.
So that was 19-year-old Sandell Jackson, who appeared in front of a Milwaukee County Circuit judge who was sentencing him. Sandell was charged with first-degree intentional homicide and attempted robbery in the shooting death of a 21-year-old. Sandell pleaded guilty to the felony murder charges. He was given a life sentence, but was hoping for a chance at parole at some point of his sentencing, but the judge denied it, and that's when Sandell started to freak out. And everyone else in the courtroom was freaking out as well. Now at number 9, we have a girl who freaked out so bad, she started hiccuping. Like it was just uncontrollably. And I remember one time I hiccuped for like 6 months straight. It was really weird, so.
The parents testified, has a history of being someone who can be manipulated.
So this teenager, Jennifer Mee, was being tried in court for a murder charge, and she just couldn't keep calm. She was freaking out while being handcuffed. Jennifer Mee actually became famous after that video, and after years, she finally talked about that viral video.
What happened to that sweet 15-year-old girl that we first met?
I couldn't even tell you. I got cased up with the wrong crowd of people, really. Unfortunately, when I started experimenting with drugs, I just felt like I was invincible to everything.
Now she will be facing the rest of her life in prison, and she may not have the opportunity to ever leave. During the interview, she said that she thinks she deserves about 20 years, but not more than that.
Personally, I feel would be fair is at least 20 years. I do, because yes, somebody's life was taken, somebody's a loved one, somebody's child.
Your attorney has said now there's less than a 1 to 2% chance of you ever getting out of here. How do you hold on to hope?
I can't put nothing past God, but I've been locked up since I was 19. I can't stop fighting. I have a family that wants me home.
Next up, at number 8, we have 17-year-old Racelyn Martin, who pleaded guilty to first-degree murder, and this is after he killed his 63-year-old grandfather with a hatchet. Is this real life right now? He was sentenced to life in prison, and during court, Martin was freaking out. And this guy was just shaking. He was so scared. He was terrified of what was going to happen to him. Well, what else do you think is going to happen to you? Yeah, buddy, you're going to be in prison for the rest of your life. Okay, let's watch that again, but I'll slow it down a bit for you guys. It must be a very difficult case because both of his parents testified against him.
And appeared to be listening intently to testimony, occasionally nervously looking down. Tonight we heard testimony from both parents.
Moving into number 7, we have the youngest on our list, 13-year-old Kashawn Mann, who became the youngest person who committed murder in Kent County. Kashawn killed his mom's boyfriend. So after Kashawn's mom actually tried defending her 13-year-old son, the victim's family were outraged and chaos pursued in the courtroom.
That angered relatives of the victim, Jermel Stokes, leading to a scuffle.
The mom was saying that she actually found out her boyfriend was abusing her son and the murder was justified. I don't think that any murder can be justified, and also the mom was fighting for her son to not be tried as an adult. This is a crazy situation because you have this young kid who is abused, and now because of poor decisions, he's going to prison for the rest of his life.
This is a child. Yes, he may have committed an adult crime.
The judge was about to sentence her son, Keyshawn Mann, for second-degree murder.
But obviously, after it all comes out, he was treated in ways that I had no clue of. So we can't say that, oh, he was never mistreated.
Moving into number 6.
Court physically shaking throughout the hearing. Then the sentence was read.
So therefore, it's the sentence of this court, Mr. Rose, that you be sentenced to a minimum of 10 years to a maximum of 15 years in prison.
So that was Stacy Rose Jr., who just couldn't believe his sentencing. Rose Jr. was caught up in a fight when 49-year-old Briscoe came outside to break up the fight. He was a father of one of the teenagers. He's also a father of 5 and a grandfather to 3 grandchildren. Rose Jr. fled the scene on foot through the neighborhood, but eyewitnesses was able to tell the police who the killer was, and he was quickly arrested. Outside of the courthouse, Rose Jr.'s mom was freaking out because she couldn't believe his sentencing.
So my son wasn't a drug dealer. They went over there and stole them pills out of his car.
Rose Jr. was very shocked to know he was sentenced for so long. He claims it was an accident. This teen was just shaking like crazy in the courtroom, and he was just crying right after his sentence. Alright, so at number 5, we have someone who isn't even a teenager yet, and she was freaking out. She appeared on an episode of Beyond Scared Straight. I love that show, and I love how they're such bad kids, they get reformed, and then they turn out to be okay kids. And this girl was on track, you know, to serve the rest of her life behind bars, because she just seems so violent. Who knows what this little girl is capable of as she gets older.
I'm Ashanti, I'm 12, I like fighting, I threaten people, and I'm in the squad.
She's kind of speaking too gangster for me. I can barely hear what the heck she is saying, but from what I heard, she's not afraid of nobody. Well, until she was taken to a prison to see what her life was going to be like if she didn't change. Well, what you're about to see is someone who I've never seen be so afraid of anything before. This girl is just freaking out and just losing her mind, and she's like squealing. We have teenager Roxana Silvorsky, who was emotionally freaking out in court while she was being sentenced. Silvorsky pleaded guilty to plotting to kill her family. Is this real life right now? Imagine being her family member and you just found out that this teenager, your daughter, your sister, she was plotting on murdering you. Well, luckily she was brought in by the police before anything bad happened, and now she is serving a very long time in a women's correctional facility. Number 3, I actually just wanted to show you guys quickly a different perspective, the opposite of someone freaking out in court, and he seemed to have zero emotions while he was being sentenced. I mean, watch this.
It is hereby ordered that you be committed to the Department of Youth Services until the age of 21, and furthermore committed to the Massachusetts Correctional Institution at Cedar Junction.
This kid was just sentenced to over 40 years in prison, and he didn't even flinch. He was just 14 years old when he stabbed his teacher to death. I mean, I don't know, is he freaking out inside? Number 2.
That's an extreme recklessness, and that's intent, that's maliciousness, that's a definition of malice.
So that was 17-year-old Jacob Morgan from Rock Hill, South Carolina. He found himself in court after he was charged with arson and murder connected with his 14-year-old brother's death. Prosecutors claim that Morgan maliciously and intentionally started a fire. Morgan was so shocked when he was sentenced.
So therefore, I am going to find that there is probable cause to charge the individual with the found over 4 years.
His life just flashed before his eyes. He didn't think that he would get such a long sentence. He was charged for manslaughter, so he received 10 years for that, and another 15 years for arson, which to me it kind of doesn't make sense because, well, let's think about it for a sec. 10 years for killing someone, 15 years for setting a house on fire. I mean, I don't know. Finally, number 1.
See you, ladies and gentlemen.
I count at least 20 officers in that room to retain 19-year-old Dexter Johnson. He was sentenced to death, so yeah, he was pretty pissed off.
Johnson, the jury has found you guilty of capital murder. In accordance with the laws of the state of Texas, this court hereby assesses your punishment of death. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, this is going to complete your jury service. I'm going to meet you in the jury room.
So Johnson sat down and he kind of let it sit in for a few seconds when he was sentenced, and just a few minutes went by when he realized that there's nothing else to lose. This guy just loses his cool and he just freaks out into a rage. I'm not sure if you guys noticed, but the woman in front just booked into the floor as if there was like a gunman in the room. She was just super scared. It seemed to come out of nowhere, and luckily there were so many police officers around, because you never know what else Johnson would be capable of doing. I mean, he's already capable of murder, so what's one more murder to his rap sheet? And at number 10, we actually have a teenager who started to freak out after she was denied any possibility of parole. She was really hoping for it. When she was denied, she started to freak out. So what you're about to see is a 19-year-old killer who killed 21-year-old Nathan Potter. The victim's family was very afraid, but they are glad that they're being locked away for life. At least they can sleep at night knowing that a killer won't be out there. Next up, we have a teenager who admitted to murder while he throws up in a courtroom in at number 9.
Mosley became ill in court today after he pled guilty to aggravated murder and other charges. Prosecutors believe the reaction was a genuine sign of remorse.
So that was remorseful Timothy Mosley. Remorseful or not, he murdered 18-year-old Justin Michael Back in Waynesville, Warren County, Ohio. Justin Back was murdered at his family's home. Mosley took a plea bargain to avoid the death penalty. So all Mosley had to do was give the court all the information they want of exactly what happened and what was his involvement in this murder. There was another teenager involved as well. He was identified as Austin Meyer. Austin was given the death sentence and he became the youngest inmate on death row in Ohio at the time. Meyer was sentenced to death at the age of 19 years old back in 2014. He is still currently on death row and his new execution date is in 2022. That is just absolutely insane. Do you guys think that teenagers should be allowed to be given the death penalty? Let me know in the comment section below. Alright, number 8.
In the direction of the deceased torso and lower extremities with that 2 times.
So that was a gangman who murdered 15-year-old Alessandro Guzman Feliz. The gunman was a part of the Dominican gang in the Bronx. So this death occurred in a mistaken identity, so the wrong person was killed according to all the testimonies. There was 12 suspects in this case. Right now there are 4 suspects in this case, including the guy who we just saw incarcerated at Rikers Island. They are segregated from other prisoners and they've been receiving heightened security protection at the prison due to receiving death threats from within the prison and even from their own gang members for killing an innocent teenager. So let's just say that being locked up right now might be the safest thing for these teenagers. Next up, number 7, we have a bunch of teenagers freaking out in court.
The end result, more individuals being taken into custody.
There was a group of teenagers who led police in a car chase after stealing a vehicle. These are some pretty serious crimes, but yet in the courtroom these teenagers were not taking the situation seriously. It just looks like they're all trying to impress each other.
At the hearing for 15-year-old Maurice Thomas, the suspected driver, and 15-year-old Thomas Butler, seen here smiling for our cameras, the pair seemed to show up to show out in front of a judge.
I think these kids have to be on drugs or something. And why are they giving gang signs in the courtroom? Next up, number 6, we have another teenager who might have taken a lot of drugs. It looks like this kid is going through withdrawal because he appeared in court shaking like crazy and it looks like he just can't control himself. So this right here is 17-year-old Jeffrey Hazelwood from Georgia, and you can see how much this kid is shaking in court. It looks like he can't control it. Hazelwood is accused of killing 2 teenagers behind a grocery store. He is facing a ton of serious criminal offenses. On top of the murder cases, Hazelwood will be facing aggravated assault, theft, and financial fraud charges as well. Hazelwood does not look mentally fit during the investigation and his hearing. There was actually a video of Jeffrey Hazelwood freaking out during an intense investigation where he said, "I didn't shoot them," but then as the video goes on, he says, "A voice in my head said to do it."
Running away the first time, after you shot them, running away.
Didn't shoot them.
Because the bad guy would have gotten you. That's the story that we're going with. The invisible bad guy that looks just like you.
So, contradicting himself a little bit, and he's admitting that he actually did it. I do hope this kid can get some serious help. Moving into number 5.
Court. Come back again.
That was 18-year-old Penelope Soto, who appeared in court after she was arrested for possession of a prescription drug as Xanax. While in court, she decided to just laugh at the whole thing and cuss at the judge. Well, this turns out to be the wrong move.
Well, it's not a joke, you know. We have not had any kind of drugs in the last 24 hours.
Actually.
Bye-bye.
Adios.
Come back, ma'am. Come back.
The judge upped the bail.
Count one would be 10,000.
Are you serious?
I am serious. Adios.
So after all of that happened, the teenager still didn't learn from that. The judge raised her bail to $10,000. He dismissed the teenager, but on her way out, this happens.
Come back again.
and the judge flipped.
What's up?
I believe I heard you saying to...
Yes, I did. I'm not going to the...
I believe you... Did you say me?
Actually, I
Did you say that?
Yes, sir, I did.
Oh, you did say that? I find you in direct criminal contempt. 30 days in the county jail.
I can't help but to laugh at this. This is just stupidity, and hopefully this is a lesson learned. Alright, number 4.
Indicate that Miss Me presents a flight risk, or that she would, with the conditions that we've proposed and any others that the court would add,
This video actually went viral because 15-year-old Jennifer Me was crying hysterically, and she was hiccuping as well. And now she is dubbed the Hiccup Girl. Piers Morgan actually interviewed the Hiccup Girl, talking about the crimes that she committed. She was given a life sentence without the possibility of parole, and this is for a gunshot murder despite not actually pulling the trigger herself. Jennifer Me was just with the wrong crowd of people. Moving into number 3.
When Luis Reyes learned that he'd be in jail for the next 30 years, you knew just by his body language the bailiffs would have to hold him.
That was Luis Reyes Jr., who was just sentenced to 30 years in prison after his very sinful act of sexually assaulting an 89-year-old woman. Is this real life right now? That is just sickening. Well, in court when he found out his sentencing, he started to freak out and he had to be taken out of the court and restrained. The 89-year-old woman was actually there in the courtroom listening to the sentencing. The teen did apologize for what he has done, but the court didn't think Reyes had remorse, hence his sentencing. Number 2.
Brings 17-year-old Jacob Muzan and 18-year-old Drake Campbell to tears.
That was 17-year-old Jacob Muzan and 18-year-old Drake Campbell, who broke into tears in court. They were both being charged for murder, attempted murder, burglary, and 2 counts of armed robbery. Both of the teenagers only started crying when the judge denied their bonds due to a lack of emotion they gave during the trial. Both teens showed no remorse. One of the sisters spoke in court, and she apologized for him, and she knows that in their hearts they are breaking. So they're not showing any physical remorse, it's just all the remorse inside. I don't buy it. And finally, number 1, we have this. That actually sounded like a gunshot went off. I was actually really afraid when I watched this video. I was like, what the heck just happened? Well, that was 19-year-old Dexter Johnson from Texas, who had to be restrained from police officers after he decided to lunge towards the victim's family. I mean, haven't you done enough? This came just after he was sentenced to death, so he thought, you know what, there's nothing else to lose, let's just go hurt some more people. Luckily, there was like 30 officers in that room. One of the county court deputies actually tackled, like he launched and tackled Johnson to the ground. And that happened just before he was able to attack the family members.